Welcome to the Player Engage podcast, where we dive into the biggest challenges, technologies, trends, and best practices for creating unforgettable player experiences. Player Engage is brought to you as a collaboration between Keyword Studios and Helpshift. Here is your host, Greg Posner.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Player Engage podcast. Today we're joined by the head of product at Helpshift, Erik Ashby. This is a special episode of the podcast where we're going to really focus on the one technology we keep hearing all of our guests talk about over and over again, which is generative AI. We find ourselves at the forefront of an extraordinary leap in technological evolution, where distinguishing true innovators versus the mere imitators is paramount. The question arises, how are we going to identify and harness these emerging technologies of the early stages of the hype cycle? Together, let's explore the intricate art of differentiating genuine game changers from fleeting trends. Gain the knowledge of expertise required to identify and leverage these technologies at their inception, propelling your organization to the forefront of innovation and reaping the numerous benefits that await. Prepare to embark on an exhilarating journey and discovery to secure your position as a visionary leader in the ever-evolving landscape of generative AI. Erik, that was really more of an intro of the show and not so much about you, but do you want to give our listeners kind of an idea of who you are, where you're coming from?
Well, I mean, I'm Erik Ashby. First off, I've been a longtime gamer. I was thinking about, when I was thinking about this podcast, when I got into game was actually my father and I, when I was a kid, back in the 80s, we owned, there was what do you call them? They were the arcades that were going on, and we actually supplied arcades with gaming cabinets. And so, early Donkey Kong, Ms. Pac-Man, all of those were the things that I just started playing because we would supply the arcades with that. But yeah, I've been in the industry for quite some time. I worked at Microsoft for about 20 years, and then I moved over to Helpshift about 6-7 years ago. And we've dove into AI soon after I moved on over to Helpshift. And so this is really kind of a topic that's near and dear to my heart. There's been a lot of fads that have come and gone. We're kind of going through a new fad right now. So super happy to talk about this space, because I think it's a really, really interesting space, and glad it's kind of getting the visibility that it's long deserved. So
Yeah, and I agree with you. We few years back, we started entering the world of the metaverse and what's the metaverse going to be, and it's still trying to work its way out. And now a new technology comes out, which is a generative AI. And it's funny because each of the podcast guests that we have on, we talk about what trends are they most excited about. And this is always the top answer. And I could see why. We're all mostly using it in our day-to-day jobs. I think the people that are using it correctly, it becomes a seamless integration that's part of your workflow and works well for you. But it's also very early, and things are going to change. And we're living in a world where technology changes quickly. Companies want to be the first to launch a product and gain that first mover's advantage. We've seen this work historically, right? We look at things like AIM, which I'm really dating myself talking about that one. Netflix, Uber, all these first movers gained advantage in the marketplace and really held on to that for years. But we've also seen this backfire, right? People might say maybe something like MySpace, although MySpace did stay around for a few years, they lost out to Facebook, Blockbuster, and Kodak. So let's start simple, right? We're thinking about these companies that are making these first mover advantages here, but all these companies are releasing products. It's like a whole bunch of things hitting the market at first. How do you keep up with this technology? What are your sources of news? How do you follow what's exciting?
Well, I mean, for me, there's first a couple ways. It's just kind of who I am. I'm an explorer, have always been an explorer. So whenever I hear about some new technology or something like that, I tend to ignore kind of the news and stuff like that, and I just dive into it. When good example, when OpenAI came out, there's a ton of hype about, like, oh my gosh, what is this? What's it going to do? And it was really just diving into it and jumping into it. And you talked about some of these older technologies that come and gone. For me personally, it's really about just getting into it and understanding kind of what they've done, what their approach was. And I've found what I've typically found is especially when this new emerging technology, is that there's always hype. Like, look at this thing that's new. There's always hype. But the ones that tend to stay around are the ones that can bypass that hype and actually really solve a problem. That can really do something. And I'll really give you a good example. You brought up Uber, and Uber's, of course, has AI that's all built into it. And there'd been a ton of technology that had come out over the years in the the transportation space. There's a ton that would come out and whatnot. Uber then said, look, it's not about the technology, it's about solving a problem. How do we actually use this technology to get somebody on a corner of a street to their house in as short a time as possible? And when the brand focuses less on the technology and more on the solution of like, what is it that you're trying to solve? That's when it becomes a game changer. And those are the brands that I have seen that have kind of gone past the hype, because it's not about the technology. It's about the solution. And that's kind of what I'm seeing with AI today. Is I'm seeing, a lot of brands could jump in and be like, whoa, look, we're using ChatGPT or whatever. And I'm seeing other brands who's actually picking up and saying, well, actually, this is how we're going to use it to solve a problem that's actually meaningful. And maybe don't even recognize it.
It's an interesting point. So I think the first thing you're really talking about is understanding the use case. And we talk about use cases a lot. Right? And it's part of the day-to-day for most of us that are on these calls and doing this thing. But right, you can't just create a new technology and force a problem upon someone and say, hey, use our technology to solve this newfound problem that we helped you create, right? You need to really talk to people, understand their workflows, right? I think a lot of people don't know what they're going to use generative AI for, but the more they talk it out with people, the more they see how others are using it, you start to formulate this idea rather than, again, just saying, here's this new problem we've created and you can solve it with our own tool. Is that kind of sound accurate?
And that's often I see, especially when kind of this new hype comes out, a lot of brands will jump in just because they're trying to get the eyes and the views of like, wow, we're using this new technology, and they're kind of missing the point. The point is really about solving the problem that you're set forth to solve, and let the technology take the background. And in the end, like, imagine 2, 3, 4 years down the road, everyone's talking about like generative AI right now, but generative AI will be a part of our everyday work. It'll just be there. When I go to generate a document, or I go to write something, or I go to write decode or whatever, generative AI is just going to sit beside me and it's going to be like, okay, like here's what we recommend, or here I see you make a mistake because it's not what I would have done, or things like that. This is going to be there. And it's not going to be like blatantly in front of our face, like, oh, we're using generative AI. It's just part of what we do. It's part of the solution. And again, that's where I see that brands have really been successful. I'll use another example, another one that I think is really good. I think, everybody knows Google Maps. We all just use Google Maps. And of course, Google Maps is backed by AI. It has a lot of AI that's in it. When you open it up, it knows that it's dinner time, and it knows that most people open up Google Maps at dinner time, and so it's going to show you the restaurants that are right there. But it's not blatant. It's like, oh, look, I'm using AI right in front of you. It's this part of the solution. It's just embedded into that tool set. And so you don't even recognize it. It's just like, oh yeah, I want to go to dinner. Boom, done. And you go. That's where, to me, the magic is when you don't actually recognize that it's there. And that's really where what kind of makes me excited about this new technology as it's coming out is when it gets used in those cases.
It's funny you say that, because I'm going back to one of the podcasts we did with Bo Button, a customer of Helpshift at Atlas Reality, and we were talking about the metaverse, and he said the best implementations of the metaverse are those that are running on games and people have no idea that they're even using the metaverse. The idea is, let this technology run in the background and let them be using this new technology, but you don't need to announce it. Just let it happen and they'll see it. And it seems like this is more of a common theme is, yeah, it's exciting to say you're going to be the first one using ChatGPT. All of a sudden our tools are using ChatGPT, but that's really just makeup on a pig at the end of the day. You really want to be able to implement something in the back end of the tool that's working and it's almost seamless to the user's day-to-day job, except maybe the benefits that they're getting from it.
Yeah. And that's the whole point. I mean, there is a good reason for the hype. I mean, AI has moved very quickly recently, and like people were asking me last year about the metaverse, since you brought it up. They're like, "Well, is the metaverse going to take over?" and things like that. And the metaverse is definitely great, interesting. There's a lot of technology that's coming out, but when I think about the kind of the next generation of generative AI, where I'm talking about, like the Mid-Journey and ChatGPT and things like that, it has a couple of things that are really going for it right now that is kind of driving the hope. The one thing is it's introducing some new scenarios. People are like, oh, wow, this thing can actually sit beside me and help me out. It can actually generate some content. It can help me write something. It can save me time. It makes my life better. And so it actually has a use case that's interesting. And the second thing is the barrier to entry is super low. Like metaverse still has a pretty high barrier to entry, especially if you're talking about a metaverse experience where you have to put the thing on and things like that. But for some of these generative AIs, it's as simple as human language. I type and I ask it a question and it's going to respond and it's there. And so when you have a good value proposition, you have low barrier to entry, then you're going to see kind of the explosion that comes out. It's kind of that inflection point where the technology has really kind of come along where you've seen that. But with that hype, then comes everybody jumping in trying to use it for everything. And that's, of course, then why you have the question at the beginning is like, what's hype? What's not?
You've been in the industry for quite a bit of time. You've been at Helpshift for almost 10 years. You were at Microsoft for quite a bit of time. Historically, have you seen a trend like this before? Do you remember kind of a previous experience where you're seeing this, whether it be Web 2 or something else, and have like similarities to that?
Well, I mean, I don't know. If you take a look at usefulness and barrier to entry, take a look at those two. I would definitely go back to the the mobile phone revolution or whatever. I mean, mobile phones, nothing new. We had these bricks that started. I remember when my dad brought the first one home in the 80s, and he's like, look, I've just spent $1,000 for this brick. We're like, what is it? Well, look, I can call him anytime. It was funny. And then in the 90s, Microsoft and came out, and of course there was the crackberries, the blackberries that came out. Blackberries were interesting because they started to get it. They're like it solved a problem. The barrier to entry was still a little bit too high. Then came the iPhone, where they just said, look, we're just going to reduce the barrier to entry, make it super simple for everybody to use, and we're going to make it super powerful. And then all of a sudden, it just exploded at that point. You take those two things, you make it useful, remove the barrier to entry. It was all about solving problems. Like they took all of the buttons off the screen. They're just like, let's solve the core problems. And when we do that, then it makes it really interesting. And that's what, of course, that's what they're attempting to do. And so I do see AI, honestly, is kind of going to be embedded in our lives, just to the extent like mobile is. And it's just there. It's just there.
Yeah, I personally am enjoying, for the most part, right? There's these weird nuances where they're implementing these tools to Gmail or to other email programs to auto-generate an email. And we had someone I was talking to the other day who said they realized that they got an AI-generated email back from their friend, and they were kind of pissed off about that because if you're not going to take the time to respond to your friend, like there becomes this fine line. It's like this Black Mirror episode that's coming to be is what's real these days, what's not, who you're going to give that full-time effort to. And I think you start to learn how to use these tools properly, right? You don't let ChatGPT or any AI tool write the complete email, but maybe you use it as a starting point to generate some ideas, and then you pick and pull what you want.
Well, and there's an evolution that's going on with AI. I'll just kind of quickly walk you through how I perceive. There was a world where AI didn't exist. It just didn't exist, and we all did everything by ourselves. And AI has been creeping into our world as kind of these background assistants for quite some time. We just we never really recognized. I mean, it's very simple AI. Spell checker is AI. It recognizes patterns and makes a suggestion to you. But most of the time, AI was in the background, kind of recommending to a human. Okay. And it's kind of moved more and more foreground. And now it's kind of to the point where AI is almost like a coworker to us. It's like somebody who is kind of with us all the time, and we can ask it questions, it can respond back, or it's like, hey, could I write that letter for you, or things like that. And so we're in a different world now where we need to understand, like, just like if I had you as a coworker who was with me all the time, there'd be some things that I'd be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take this. This is probably better for me to respond to or to deal with and things like that. But that's really what's happening. And what I perceive is that as AI gets smarter and better, there'll be places where we then step back a little bit and we'll be like, okay, AI, look, you take this and I'm going to monitor you as you do whatever this workload is. But that's kind of how it's been evolving. And of course, us as human beings, we just need to, we need to understand and how does that work for us? And so it gets into a really interesting question then is like, what is AI really good at? What can it do? And that's one of the things that I've been looking at. Is like, okay, what makes AI really powerful? Because you have a lot of AI that's out there today that can do a lot of things, and it's like, okay, AI can answer questions, but how do you actually make it so it's like capable of doing something? And that's where you have to actually add two other things to AI. And when these three things come together, you get extremely powerful. So you have to have an AI which has the ability to understand the world, answer questions, be able to talk, things like that. And what we're seeing is AI is to get to that point. You then have to add to that AI specialist knowledge. You have to say, okay, AI, I know that, you know about the world, you know about things, but let me teach you about this one specific area. Let me make you really, really good at this one area. Just like if you were to hire somebody from Harvard who's super smart, you bring them into your company and you'd be like, hey, let me spend some time and really get you to understand this, whether it's about the game or about the system or about my company or whatever. And then the third thing you add to it is you add to it capabilities. Like, let me give you the ability to actually do things. Maybe I have you connected to a system so you can do refunds or things like that. But you add those three things together, you give a strong AI plus training plus capabilities. Now you actually have a really interesting system because you're able to actually not just answer questions, but do something with it. And that's kind of where I see AI is kind of going next is you have these specialists, these AIs that actually have this capability. And, if you talk about the gaming, the gaming arena that we're in is, I'm super excited about kind of some of this because I'm going to see these AIs that will pop up, and brands are going to do that. They're going to give that, they'll take kind of the general GPT model or whatever model they start with. They're going to then train it with its in-game or in-app specialities, and then they'll give it some power. They'll say, these are the 5 tasks that you can go do and whatever. And now you essentially have a specialist coworker who can actually go do work for you, much more than just, oh, I can respond to someone. So that's kind of where I see it going. Again, we need to manage it as we would any employee. We need to manage them. So it's very interesting.
Does it become a problem, especially with some of these 3 pillars, right? Your AI, your specialist knowledge, and your capabilities, when you have companies like Google, or you have companies that have all this information about everyone, right?
Yeah.
Clearly they're going to have the leg up, right? Like, I'm going to think big picture here, and I apologize because my thoughts are going to be random and all over the place. OpenAI was the first one to really publicize, maybe not
Yep.
fully, but right? But like, they're a smaller company. They beat Google to the punch. They beat all these other companies to the punch with a publicly facing working tool that was nice to use. But how do small companies with that lack maybe specialist knowledge, like, are they at a disadvantage? Is this a bad path for companies to start going down?
Yeah, I don't think so. When I look at these big companies like OpenAI and Google and things like that, they will always only be able to do one of the 3 pillars. Okay, which is, they'll be able to be that generalist. Okay, they'll be able to take the AI and like train it about the world, which is great. Yeah, I mean, let's compare IBM. IBM came out with Watson a while ago, which was was supposed to be this great AI. Really, what Watson was the neural network, but it was like a kindergartner. Like, it would come in and just knew nothing of the world, and so you had to spend all your time just teaching it about the world before you could teach it about your company. And so it would cost you several $1,000,000 just to get a Watson up, because it's like a kid. You had to like train him through whatever. So now when I look at Google and I look at OpenAI, it's like they're giving us a well-seasoned human, I won't say human being, but artificial intelligence, a well-seasoned artificial intelligence that has been taught in the ways of the world and language, and understands kind of general things that are going on, knows how to code, knows how to put pictures together, blah, 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 things like that. But it doesn't know about you or your company or your game or whatever. And so I wouldn't, and I personally wouldn't be sharing those things out. I would take the general AI and I would add it my knowledge, but I would keep it to me. And that's where I'd make the difference, is that it would become a specialist based on the generalist. And Google and all of them, they're trying to solve the generalist, which is, by the way, a very hard problem. So they should be solving that. Like a small company should not be trying to solve, like, let OpenAI and Google solve the generalist problem, and then we build on top of it, which is, to me, is a very practical approach to it. You start with someone who is smart, and you add on to them specialist knowledge, give them core capabilities. Now you've got something very powerful.
I don't know if you saw, I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago, a company in India got rid of 80% of their staff, replaced them with chatbots. They were a customer service based company. So
Yeah.
do you plan to, obviously they do that and they get their name in the news. So that's good, whether it's good or bad for everyone, right? But do you foresee that coming to more and more companies willing to take a chance like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's look, there's no question about it. AI is going to make us more effective. It's going to make us more efficient. Companies that flat out go and do that, to me, what I feel like is that they were having their humans do robotic tasks to start with. I mean, that's what they're doing, is they're just saying, look, great, we have this, we have these people that are just out there answering questions. I'm just going to go get an automation that can answer questions. Humans are empathetic. Humans are creative. AI can pretend to be creative, but humans are really the creative ones. So humans are empathetic, humans are creative, humans understand priority, humans understand how to problem solve, all of these things. That's where humans should be. That's where we work best. And so the way that I see, brands really working forward, working together, is when it's AI and humans together. That's the most powerful one. And so if a company came in and said, "Oh, we just got rid of half our guys," I'd be like, "Sounds like you were treating them as as robots to start with," and makes me question what they were doing. But yeah, it's we'll see definitely things change, but brands that understand how to combine the AI with the human power, the brands that are going to succeed. And I firmly believe that it's like your job's not going to be replaced by AI. Your job's going to be replaced by someone else who's using AI, and that's and so, or your app or your whatever, it's going to be replaced by someone else who's figured out how to implement AI in it.
Your role as the head of product, forget the company, right? It doesn't matter, right? When a new technology like this comes up on your radar, at what point does something go off in your mind saying, I need to start looking at this technology and start thinking about how to implement it?
Yeah, that's interesting because it's kind of hard right now for me on this question, because we thought about this about 6-7 years ago when it was initially coming. Again, the thing that the way that we were looking at it back then, and it's still the way that we're looking at it now, is we weren't looking at the technology, we're looking at the problem. And I'll just give you an example using ourselves. Like what is it that we do? We're in customer service. So customer service it's very simple when you break it down to what it's trying to do. It's trying to get a person who raises their hand and they say, I have a problem, to a state where that person goes, thank you, you solved my problem. Okay. And in between those two states, there's a bunch of things that go on. And so our job is, with Helpshift, is we're trying to build the technology to make it so that someone can get from I have a problem to I have a solution as fast as possible. And when we focus on that, we're constantly asking ourselves the question, what can help us do it faster? And so several years ago, we're like, AI could help this here. So let's start exploring that. And so, I would hope that a brand, when they're looking at their problems that they're trying to solve, they're like, what are you trying to do? Well, we're trying to create a game that is highly immersive. Okay, great. What does that mean? How are you trying to solve that problem? And then you should be looking at the new emerging technologies long before now, and then be like, oh, how would AI be able to do this? And I've seen some very innovative things over the years. I think what OpenAI has done is it's lowered the barrier. It's making it a lot easier for brands to then implement it, because they're like, oh, I don't have to take all the time growing this child up to be a college student. I mean, a college graduate. I now have a college graduate to work with, so it's lowered it. But understanding how I would have used it, you could have you could have easily done that a while ago. So that's always been my approach, is understand your problem and look at it like that. Hopefully people aren't surprised. Like I said, AI has been around for a long time. What may be surprising is how fast that it has evolved in the past 2 or 3 years. And that's really what people need to get ahead of, is like, it is evolving, it is moving fast. And if you thought you had several years before you could implement it because it's just not there yet, that's kind of, I think, what's caught people off guard, that it's moving very quickly.
It is moving quickly. And
Yeah.
with that, right, we have at Helpshift, right? We basically have our own LLM, our large language model that learns
Yeah.
about players' intent, right? But when ChatGPT offers, I'm going to pick on them because they're the most well known, right? Not the similar offering, right? But sort of the same technology. Do you look back at it and think about it? We need to implement some ChatGPT features just for the appeal, just to get the broader audience knowing that we're using that, even though we may have a more sophisticated technology already in use.
Yeah. So there's, when I look at AI, I actually break down AI into kind of three major components. So the first part of AI is pattern matching. Having the neural kind of whatever to be able to say, oh, I recognize this pattern before. Pattern matching has been around for quite some time. It's used quite well. Then intent detection, using that pattern to then say, oh, I understand what you want. I understand what you need. And that is something that has been coming along, and that's, in fact, if you take a look at what we've been doing with our intent engine, which has been extremely powerful, we get easily 90+% of all conversations that come in. We understand the intent and can route it and handle it just fine. And so the intent detection is there. And Alexa and things like this, they're all built on that. It's like, oh, I have a question. They understand the question, and then they just go Google the answer and bring it back. What is new, what we've seen in the past couple of years, is the third part, which is the generative AI, which is, instead of just responding, I can now actually generate a response based on a combination of other responses that have happened out in the world. So it used to be like, oh, it would detect that I wanted to write code. It could point me to code. Now it can say, oh, I intent that you want to write some code. I can now generate, based on 1,000 lines, 1,000 samples of code that I read before, this is what I think the code should look like. And that's what, when I look at the generative AI, it's doing, is it's adding kind of that third pillar, which is interesting, especially when you're in a communication experience, whether it's in a game and you're trying to generate some chit chat, which is really interesting to be able to use chat APIs for kind of some chit chats, and to make the people there feel real. But also in customer service, so that you can then respond and have it feel like like a human being, or things like that. So I definitely do see Chat GPT and the generative AI impacting and being an addition to the tools and services like that have been there, and you've seen several of these things come out, where like issue summaries, where it summarizes the issue, or suggested responses, or things like that.
It's interesting. I know this is a completely different vertical than ours, right? But right now, at the time of filming this, right, the actors and the screenwriters and all of
Yeah.
them all went on strike, right? And I understood the strike, but then I heard today that they're trying to replace all extras as just being AI generated extras, and that's just insane to think
Yeah.
that these jobs are like legitimate jobs, and right, those are movies, but think about voice artists in games and regular artists in games, and like I dream of this day when I could just as talk to an NPC and the NPC knows all about me, but I understand at the same time that's cannibalizing jobs in the industry. It's kind of this, what's good, what's bad. It's crazy to, again, with the speed of how
Yeah,
things are
I mean,
changing, it's nuts.
yeah. Let's talk about generative AI. For a while, and I've learned this in over the kind of my experience over the years, kind of being in the industry where we create stuff. Software is the creation of stuff. We are always looking to create something better, more interesting, and things like that. And the way I see generative AI is, it allows us to be able to do that, to create more and create faster, which just means that what is produced will be even further and further better. Getting into the industry of like entertainment. It used to be that you had to draw the pictures, right? Just like, and so to create a 2-hour movie would take like millions and millions of man hours. And they're like, oh, now computers came in. I don't need all these animators. Okay, so then what happened? The stories got better. The medium got better. It became improved. And so as these technologies come in that makes it more efficient, humans have to up the game. We've got to just say, okay, great. So now we just have to leverage this technology to make it better. And I've seen that. I talked to a good friend of mine who's an artist, and I said, hey, there's this Mid-Journey. What do you do? And she's like, to be honest, like, there's a lot of hype about Mid-Journey, and is it ethical and all that stuff. Without getting that, she's like, what it's done is it's helped inspire me to make better art. That's what it's done, is it's inspired me to make better art. And that's how I make my business, is I create unique, better art. So yeah, there'll be things that we have to do as human beings as we go through this. But the thing that I always come back to in all of my time that I've worked with AI is it comes back to taking a practical approach. Taking a look at the AI and saying, okay, it is a tool. How do we use that tool in a practical way to have the outcome that we want? And to me, that's that's the best way to use it. It's like, it is a tool. Let's use that tool to generate the outcome. And if we can now be faster and better, then let's be faster and better and build up the world with it. That's how I see it.
It's an interesting points you bring up, right? Because you're not against that concept, right? And you're trying to look for this win-win-win. And with AI, right, you have a win for the company because the company can save money by outsourcing. You have a win for the end user. Well, sometimes a win for the end user, right? Because you're dealing with someone right away. But how do you get the actual agent, or how do you get that person at the bottom? I think I don't want to call it Darwinism, right? That's a terrible way to look at it, or the old GE where you always nix the bottom people, right? But if you're not using this technology to up your game, if you're not using it to leverage yourself, you're going to be eaten alive. Probably not the best way to put that either, but right,
Yeah.
it's embrace the change. This is potentially the dawning of this new technical era, right? And how do you take advantage of it?
Yeah, there's a book that I was recommended to me a while ago. I'm going to show it to you here, and it's called Factfulness. It is an amazing book because it's 10 reasons why we're wrong about the world and why things are better than you think. As we've changed, in history over a number of things. Everyone's like, oh, the world's getting worse because of this or that. There's always that hype. But the reality is that as society, as human beings, we take these opportunities to better ourselves and to better the world. And that's why really I always have come from approach of when these new technologies come out is like, what's practical? What makes sense for us to leverage this? Because it's, again, and as I said in the beginning, it's not about the technology. It's about the problem that you're trying to solve. And if AI can come and help you create a better experience or to solve that problem, then use it appropriately to do that. If you're bringing AI in just because you want to be like, oh, I have AI, then yeah, you're going to actually have lots of problems. You're going to make mistakes with it, guaranteed. And we've seen that before with a number of technologies.
So, am I allowed to go in to start asking questions about what has Helpshift done at taking a look at these technologies and putting thought into how they're going to implement them?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you asking me if you can ask that, or are you asking that the question?
If you said no, I would edit it out. But since you said yes, let's roll with it.
Let's go with it. Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, we, like I said, I talked about the, the pattern recognition technology. We actually have been using that behind the scenes for quite some time so that we can gain insights on what is the, kind of what is coming in the system, what are the problems that you're seeing, what are, kind of so that you can start to understand what's going on. So the pattern recognition has been something we've had for quite some time. Again, it's kind of behind the scenes. It's this technology that we have. We introduced our intent technology. I think it was 17 or 2017, 2018 is when we started to introduce our intent technology. We've gone through several iterations of it. And what's really interesting about that is when we first is like, oh, let's just go out and do this. That's where we learned about kind of the importance of taking a practical approach. When we first implemented it, we're like, okay, hey, let's just have everybody type in a word. Like if someone would say, I just purchased something by mistake, right? Well, what did they want? They want a refund. Okay, so we intent that was want a refund. And so we would do that and we'd have the intent engine doing that. What we learned is that if we put up a menu with the common options that people would have in this area, that often people would use the menu more than typing. And then you're like, well, wait a second, the menu's not it. That's not AI. It's just a menu. But what we found is that when we combine those two together, that brought us up to 90+% recognition. And that was where we took a practical approach because we're like, wait, we don't have to have them type. We can put a menu or we could do them both. That actually made a lot more sense of kind of merging AI and just standard, user interface technology. And it just boosted the outcome. And if I was someone who was like, hip on AI, I'd be like, no, we just want to be pure AI. I'm not. I want to find out what the customer wants. And if I can do it with a single thumb, I'll do it. And that was when we started to be like, yeah, if you actually, if you bring in kind of the practicality about it. We explored AI bots as compared to workflows, and we found out workflows actually perform really well. And so again, we mixed AI with workflows, and now that generative AI is out there, we're looking at how does that fit into this, and essentially when we're done, if you were to look at our what we call the modern support journey, it will have AI from start to finish, but you may not necessarily know or see that there's AI in it. From the very beginning, you'll have AI that's talking in your language so that you can be in whatever language and the bot still understands you, or you may have AI that's giving you on option one versus option two, or you may have AI in the back end that's suggesting something to the agent. Like, we're just going to embed AI just along the entire journey and not necessarily be like, oh, we have AI. We're trying to just get the problem solved, and we'll just use AI throughout it. So that's the approach we're taking. That's there's a number of technologies that we'll use in there, and if you want, I'd be happy to do a podcast on, hey, how do we use generative AI, or how do we use language AI or intent AI or pattern matching. Like, we can get all into that sometime in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to see that over time. One of the questions that first comes to mind are one of the big news things that come up a lot now is that more companies don't want their data to be part of
Yeah.
that model, right? So how is what Helpshift is doing different than the open AIs or the bards
Yeah.
of the world?
Well, and that's like first off, there is some risks with AI. Okay, there's a couple of risks. One is the one that you're bringing up, which is about data sharing, and then there's also risk about about errors and things like that. And I'll talk about both those. But data sharing is definitely something that is a problem, is a concern. And it's just like if you were to bring somebody into your company and you're like, okay, I'm going to train you on your company. You don't want that person then going out and being like, hey, look, here's all the secrets that I have. And so typically what we would do is that we would say, okay, great, we'll take a generalist that comes from, say, OpenAI, and then we will build our models on top of that makes them a specialist, but it's going to be an internal model that is only accessed by AI that's built for that company. And so you don't share your internal secrets outside of your thing. And so that's where brands make a mistake, is if they're like, oh, we're just going to throw in ChatGPT, and you're like, I actually would be a little bit careful on that. What I would do is I would take ChatGPT as a base. I would build a model on top of that so that anything that is secret about my company, that stays within my realm. But I still would leverage ChatGPT to maybe summarize a response, or to to find a general or language knowledge or any of that type of thing. I would leverage ChatGPT for. And so, like, internally at Helpshift, we actually have both internal, external AI that we leverage for that, just for that very reason.
With the sudden rise again of the popularity here, have you looked at your product team and decided that make any changes, as so maybe you need someone who's focused full time on the different
Yes.
types of AI that are coming out, or how do you take a look at that?
Well, I mean, we've always had somebody focused on AI. Do I need to have more people focused on AI? Yes. You can't have always have too few. But again, like I said before, like, the technology is going to have AI infused in it. That's kind of the way the future is, which means that every one of your product managers needs to be AI specialists. Like, they need to understand AI because they're going to be infusing AI across the board. And so, do I want to have just one person who's on AI? Yeah, probably so. Maybe two, maybe three, or whatever. But I also need to have all the product managers to have and understand how AI is going to be impacting their area and things like that. So it's more of AI needs to be seeded, and sometimes you need to take a person to be able to do that seeding. So
If you were to go back a year, what would you tell Erik, or how would you approach things differently, if at all, knowing how this has happened, this rise of
yeah,
technology?
I would say, Erik, it's going to move faster than you thought it was going to be. Like, if I
Mhm.
was looking at my roadmap a year ago, I would say, because AI is always on the roadmap. We're already, we've been developing things, but I would be like, get ready for generative AI as the next step, and it's going to move faster than you think it will. So, and like I said, we're kind of at that inflection point where the barrier to entry is now at a point where it is so low, and the value is clear, that you're going to just see it moving very quickly. And so that's what I would have said a year ago. Just, I would have been,
Buckle
Erik,
up.
yeah, 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 buckle up. Make sure that you understand this and are ready for it. So
Have there been any implementations or tools that you've used, right? And it's kind of a multi-part question, right? Because you have your mid journeys. I use something called Swell for the podcast. I
Yeah.
have, right? Like there's no true all-in-one tool yet, but have you seen any tools or implementations of any of these tools that have really impressed you and you kind of wrote down like, I want to check out how they've done this or so on?
Yeah. I mean, obviously the two big ones, it's like Midjourney, ChatGPT. Like, I mean, I use those in my everyday life, and so I can't deny that I don't use those. Obviously, we use them in our, we're building them into our own technology and things like that. I've actually seen some interesting uses of them, and in customer support. I've seen some poor uses too. I've seen some where people are like, oh, we're just going to let ChatGPT answer all of our questions, and I was like, oh, okay, let's see how that goes. But I've seen other brands that really took a more practical approach and said, okay, wait, let's really look at how we can kind of leverage it for generative, but maybe not, maybe not for everything. And so not without getting into all of the different different customer service tools that are out there. I definitely think there's been some interesting ones that have come up. So
What worries you the most about this trend?
okay, so there's two things, and one of the risks that I think is actually really real is that ChatGPT and these generative AIs have one major flaw or major concern in the industry, which is they will do things very authoritatively that may be completely wrong. Okay, they just because they don't know. It's like when you hire somebody, right? The worst thing that somebody can do is be somebody who doesn't know what they don't know, because then they're running reckless. All right, and ChatGPT, these tools, there are times where they think they're completely right and they're completely wrong, and there's this big discussion about, and you can see it like most with Midjourney, if you ever have it do fingers, right, and it does like 20 fingers there, and you're like, oh my gosh, what are you looking at? And it just doesn't know, like it just doesn't know what the human anatomy is, and so it doesn't know it's wrong. It's like, yeah, 20 fingers, that should be right, and ChatGPT will do the same thing. It'll say like, yeah, this is exactly how you do it, and it thinks it's right, which is why having it run aside of a human is great, which is why putting guardrails on it is what you need to do. It's why it's why you want to have it. You want to have it specialized, so you can be like, here, let me actually nudge you in the way that I want you to do. And so with that, so that's the first risk. Then you have brands that don't understand and manage that risk, and then it scares the world. People using these AIs in a way that they're not really meant for. And what I see is I see brands that treat AI not like they would treat a human being. Like if I were to hire a human being and I bring him and I train him, I give him guardrails. Here's the company manual. Here's how I want you to work. And people will think, no, AI is magic. We'll just bring it in and put it in front and say, here, you go answer all our most important VIP customer questions. Go for it. And of course that's not a good use of the AI. So those are kind of the two things that I'm most worried about, is that we don't understand this risk and we don't manage it appropriately.
Well, if all doesn't go well with this writer strike, maybe with the next Mission Impossible, we'll have Tom Cruise with 20 fingers on each hand
We'll
and
have 20
kind
fingers
of
on his
running
hand
around.
writing. Yeah, actually, it's been getting pretty good reviews. I might be going out
I know. It's
and
always good
checking it
reviews
out.
with
So,
that franchise there.
yeah.
How do you feel the next few months and years are going to go? Do you foresee, I guess it's all moving very quickly, right? What used to
Yeah.
take the span of years is all happening what feels like in weeks now,
Yeah.
right? And it's just going to continue to speed up. So
Yeah.
if you had a crystal ball, where do you think we're going to be here in a year with all these tools?
Yeah. I actually think that the hype's going to die down. I think because what's happening is that I'm reading every day. I'm out there reading different reports from different people, and I see a lot of the people are like, they're starting to they're like, oh yeah, this is what it can do, this is what it can't do, and then you're going to see the more practical solutions coming out, and from that, it's just going to be, like I said, I've talked about the future. It's just going to get embedded, or it's just part of what we do. And so I'm just honestly, there'll be the hype, there'll be the mistakes, there'll be things like that. But what's going to happen is, the practicality and the things that work well, those are going to bubble up to the top. Those will get implemented. The things that were going to fail in the first place, those will fail, and then we're going to end up with actually a pretty stable, environment where AI is embedded a lot in the solutions that we have. So I just, like I said, I think it's just going to happen faster than we were expecting it. So
And
that's
just to
really
be
the
clear, you're talking about hitting the end of the hype cycle. The technology itself won't go away.
oh
It's
no,
just all right. Now
yeah.
the real stuff is going to start coming.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's the hype cycle that's gonna that I because there's always this hype cycle like, oh my gosh, what is this and whatever, and then the experts start to step in, they understand it, and they're like, oh, here's how it can be used. They figure it out, it gets used appropriately, and it makes an impact, and then we all go on, and so it's really the hype cycle I think will die down, but I think there'll be a ton of places where AI will be there. And like, it's like the comment that you said earlier. It's just going to be there, but it may not be front and center like you know it. And and the reality is, it's already there. You go to the store, you buy stuff. There's AI that's there. You drive a car, there's AI that's there. It's already embedded in our lives.
So, Eric, I think that's most of the questions I have for you today. I have one last one I typically ask in the beginning, but you kind of talked about it. But what games are you playing today?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I told you some of my old games, okay, but I don't play those. But it kind of depends on the device that I'm on.
Sure.
I have my Nintendo Switch right here, and so that one. This is like whenever I travel, I take this. It's kind of embarrassing, but I'm a Mario guy, so Mario
Nice.
Odyssey. That's what I'm going through, and I
There
actually
you
like
go.
that one. On my phone, it has to be Marvel Snap. Marvel Snap is a great thing because I can just play that. I can play that anywhere. I think if I get in VR, I mean, I try a lot of games, but to be honest, Beat Saber is king. Just to be able to sit
Yep.
down and go, boom, 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 like that. And then when I get on my PC that I have set up, it's Flight Simulator.
You
It's
have the
just
full
yeah.
joystick and everything. You have
Yeah, actually, I just barely ordered it on Prime Day.
nice.
My wife hasn't yet figured it out, but
There
but
you go.
I got the whole setup. I've got the pedals and everything. So yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
And just make sure you get one use out of it before she finds out.
Yes,
Um,
I know. So
but Eric, this has been great. I think we learned a lot. I'm excited about the future of the technology, and I think you helped spread some more information and more excitement about that. Before I go in, all the information we have will be on the Player Engage website as well as the Helpshift website. But is there anything else you'd like to share with everyone?
no, I honestly, Greg, I think it was just a pleasure to be able to sit down and talk about this. This is a very important subject, and it's one that we are taking a lot of time, a lot of energy working on. And so I really appreciate you offering to have this podcast. So it was really great.
Great. Well, thank you, Eric, and thanks for listening, everyone. And look forward to next week. I'm going to cut that out because that didn't come out well. But thank you.